Welcome to a new BIM Talk. Today we are going to meet with Nicolas Catellier, and he has been doing the channel, working with the channel Revit Pure. If you're not knowing that channel, most probably you came across it at certain point of time if you're especially using Revit. Lately, he also does like interviews and discussing with peers in the industry that brings advices to the industry. But today we'll have a little interesting discussion about diving deeper into why we are using Revit, the challenges that he has been facing in the industry, some advice from him, and do's and don'ts by Nicolas. But before anything, I just want to let him to introduce himself. So, hi, Nicolas.
Hi, how are you doing?
Thank you very much. So can you please introduce a little more about yourself, like deeper, and your background, so our audience can understand more about your background?
Sure. Well, I am an architect based in Quebec City, Canada. I am natively French speaking. English is my second language. And I've been working as an architect for 10 years, and almost immediately at the start of my career, I started using Revit at a firm in Montreal. We're pioneers when it comes to BIM. So I had the chance to learn Revit very early on. And then I moved from Montreal to Quebec City. And the firm that hired me tasked me to help transition the firm from AutoCAD to Revit. So that was a multi-year challenge. I've learned a lot of things. And I was also tasked to prepare teaching material for the firm. And a couple of colleagues told me, you're actually good at doing this. So I had the idea, having the thoughts of running my business on the side to start my own website, my own YouTube channel to help teach Revit, especially because I was a little frustrated with some of the learning content that existed online. I thought most of it was too technical or too complicated for beginners. It seemed like it was written to IT people in mind or very advanced people. So I decided to try to make at least the most simple guides that I could.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you have a very important point here because most of the time, one of the main barriers, even right now, I'm doing a study, and in the study, it says the technical skills are not, the soft skills are not anymore the major concern, but most of the peers was voting for, in fact, the technical skills, the implementation problems for BIM is due to the technical issues. And I think the technical issues is like because people doesn't have the skills, and to bring them the skill set that they are needing, we need to find the techniques to educate them, to motivate them, to make it engaging, but at the same time to give them the purpose and they can get what they are looking for. And I have been teaching and training Revit a lot as well, like maybe over 5,000 hours of teaching.
Yeah,
so
really?
I know what do you mean exactly, because people are learning Revit, and then when they come to use it, they cannot really adapt to it or use it for their purpose. So when you're changing from CAD to BIM, I think that you also have a mindset shift. So can you tell a little bit about like that conflict of how people were used to do it in the traditional workflows, and when you changed to, when you're pushing a company to the change for Revit or BIM authoring tools, did you have issues with that they want to still stick with the traditional workflows but use the new tool, this kind of issues? And how did you went across, and how did you challenge those issues? How did you solve them?
Yes, absolutely. I would say that the biggest challenge was resistance to change. I'm sure that's a common story across many firms when people are trying to, not just with Revit, you bringing any new technology, really, it's always a challenge. It depends on the people, but there will always be people who say, well, we've been doing things this way for the last 10 years, and if it has been working great, so why should we change? And, first, I think you need some empathy. You have to put yourself in the shoes of some people. Let's say they've been super CAD experts. They're really good at CAD. They're used to it. So try not judge them and try to see where they're coming from, and try to understand their resistance and understand it and treat them with respect. And then teach them with the benefits, what they could actually gain from going to BIM, and using concrete examples, and always being patient and teaching them one by one with any chance you get. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's really about the human aspect, the psychology of BIM. Really, that is the most challenging part.
That's 100% true, because especially when you come to these people who are very good with CAD or traditional workflows, one of the things that I was doing always is that show them the best thing from their perspective, that they will be like shocked how fast you can do it in Revit and how easy it is. So rather than going the complicated parts or just a normal approach of training, we were like focusing how can you influence those people and try to change slowly their mindset and perspective, so they can say, oh, okay, let me try this and let me try that and let me try that. And I started liking it and let me try more. And then obviously at some point of time, they start using it properly. So what about the workflow though? They have been like, when you switch to learning, yes, you're teaching them and so forth, but what about the mindset? How did it change, like the workflow? Because they have been using one workflow in the traditional workflow, that they're not tend to change, they share a lot of information, but in BIM you need to share a lot or input a lot of information. So how did you bridge that gap?
I would say I went through an iterative way. What I mean by that is that instead of going with the crazy expert template when started, I would say I had a basic template, and slowly you push to be a little more automated, to have more advanced workflows. But the way we started, we kind of used AutoCAD techniques and Revit, which we don't use anymore. But to get started, people were not too shocked when they were getting to Revit, especially some users. Because I thought if everybody was on my level at the firm, we could have had much more complex standards right on. But I didn't want to lose my users early on, so I went to easy to understand, although it could be a little more automated. And slowly, years by years, we're finding the processes. And a tip that I have is I thought about 2 or 3 times a year. I would take a couple of hours of teaching and teach them sometimes the new features of the new Revit, but also workflows, internal workflows. And I would also take the most common frustration from the users. Often it's the detailing, for example. That's kind of a common frustration I hear from users. Working with CAD is another one. And I would teach a little seminar basically about how to solve this issue and tips to get across the frustrations. So I would say key is constant communication and not judging the complaints from the users, and then just telling them the reason you're failing at this, it's because you're bad and you don't learn. So really hearing their frustration and trying to create a learning content based on that.
And why did you try to go with Revit, and why didn't you, for example, stick to ArchiCAD or another authoring tool like Tekla or from Bentley or Foster Systems, anything else? But why Revit?
It's a good question. I would say when the first job I had in Montreal as an intern, they were using Revit, so I got the Revit experience for a year, and I would say in 2012. Revit was pretty much the only game in town. There was some ArchiCAD, but not that much. So it was a big plus on a resume to have Revit experience. And so I would say that's mostly the reason, because I've always used it, and it's hard to switch, and mostly because most of the engineers and collaborators are also using Revit. So although technically you can use IFCs, collaborate, it's still a little easier if everyone are on the same software.
I agree with this aspect with you, because when you use Revit, getting expert in Revit takes so many years, and I can tell from my experience, I do very complex stuff, like fabrication for Revit, which is very, very detailed and complex. We are still learning, like as a team, as a person. I'm sure that when you're driving content and doing some content, you're learning, oh, I didn't know that, or I didn't know. We are still learning at this stage after 10 years. And it is
every day. Every day I learn something new. Yeah.
So it is very difficult. That's one of the main problems in the industry. Once you stick to one software, you don't want to really change. So for example, it's the same with us. We are finding it hard to change to another software. And I think Autodesk made they understood this earlier on. They did a very hard, aggressive marketing campaign, so to push the industry. Now that's why they are eating the fruits of, like having many Revit users. That's what I believe. We actually have one comment from Alfredo. He was like saying, it was really hard for me to get into Revit, and once I shut down my brain and the knowledge of AutoCAD, it was much, much easier. Yeah, I mean,
sure. It's almost like what Yoda says: you have to unlearn everything before learning it again, right?
Obviously, this is kind of architecture as well, right? You in school, in the university, you learn a different architecture, and when you graduate, you learn many other constraints that you didn't learn at the university. Obviously, with Revit, it's somewhat similar, but did you ever try to use any other software products like ArchiCAD, Tekla, or Bentley in order to judge the difference, or you didn't have a chance to do that?
A little bit. I mean, I saw demos mostly, but yeah, it's on my to-do list to try ArchiCAD. I mean, I probably tried it like more than 5 years ago. But I thought it would be funny to have a YouTube video like a Revit power user reacts to ArchiCAD or something like that. But it seems like a good piece of software, and I have colleagues that enjoy using it. It seems to be a little more the user interface seems a little more friendly for architects. It's really made for architects in mind. So I would be curious to give it a more serious try.
Actually, I agree with you on that thing, because whoever architect uses ArchiCAD, they say, oh, Revit is very complex. But actually, maybe the same thing happens because I'm an also architect and you're also an architect. So when you try to open ArchiCAD, you will find it complex, more complex than Revit, because Revit will seem to you much more organized, because that's how we get used to it. But if you think about that, I use ArchiCAD lately for the last 4 years, I would say, and I can tell you that it is quite a different approach. And there are, like, for example, you call attributes, or there are some kind of different way of saying stuff, and you can do much more settings than Revit. Revit has more. I think Revit is more like a kind of an Apple product where you have less options to change stuff. And I feel like ArchiCAD is now lately you can even change the layers. For example, you can do a window in a wall layer, and then you can add an attribute, and like there are loads of parameters that you can add. But again, it's only for architect point of view. So when you are using AutoCAD, it's very easy to adapt to ArchiCAD because everything is similar. But in Revit, everything is set. So like first question the architects generally say, oh, how do I change the thickness layer, like thickness of my wall lines, or how do I change my scale? And when you say it's automatic, and they're like, how can it be automatic? And they don't understand the judgment. Did you have similar issues when you were like implementing?
You mean issues where user didn't understand the parameters part of it?
The users generally get confused. For example, especially from my point of view, when I was like teaching mostly architects, they were like saying, how can I change wall thicknesses when I go from different views? And I was like saying, it's in the template setting, it's automatic. And they're like, how can it be automatic? They don't understand that. Or for example, scale. If you use AutoCAD, you know that the scale is 2 pieces. You can scale in a viewport and you can scale the actual view. So it's a little bit, and then when you print, you also have a scale thing. But in Revit, you have 100% zoom, and then you just say 1 to 100 and it just prints. So did you have this kind of issues when you're converting, like this kind of setups where they were so used to AutoCAD and they are getting confused when they use Revit?
A little bit, although I would say, I've used Revit straight away when I got out of college. So I didn't have that much AutoCAD knowledge to start on, which maybe it was kind of a good thing because I didn't have to put, I just didn't care about CAD. To me, it was just about creating the right Revit template. And it's okay to take your CAD standards and to bring them to BIM. But some of the CAD standards, like, well, why would you do it the same way in Revit? It doesn't make much sense. Maybe you've been using a specific visual a symbol for a reason, but in Revit, it doesn't make sense to use the same. So it's good to start fresh. And really rethink the whole thing, not just to copy all your standards from CAD.
Actually, that's interesting. So you didn't go into layer thicknesses and how, I mean, it's a little bit interesting. So now, did you in college, for example, how did you learn the, for example, showing something on the background or having the wall thicknesses that are thicker and thinner? So how did you learn then those things? Because in Revit, just most of the time it's automatic, you know?
Well, I did use CAD in college, but
In
in
college,
the workplace, it's a little different. You know, in college, it's kind of you set it like you can. I never had a formal AutoCAD training. It was just learn
just from experience.
exactly. You know, maybe someone with a little bit of experience in the studio would give us a few tips. But I basically learned trim, offset, copy, rotate, and then just the basics of the layers to set different thicknesses. But I definitely wasn't an expert. Although we did, now to think about it, I think we had a consultant give us a little bit of help to convert the line style and the line weight from AutoCAD. So he gave us we had some help early on to get the Revit template going. But after that initial setup, I was in charge of it.
That's interesting. And what are the challenges you were facing when you were teaching Revit and BIM, for example, the mindset, and what were the main challenges?
The main challenges, again, I would say psychological resistance, and I would say some topics were a little more challenging than others. I mentioned detailing earlier on. And some things that are here quite often for many firms is, well, you know, Revit is nice for geometry, but when it's time to do detailing, we go back to AutoCAD. And that's really frustrating to me because, well, first there's drafting views, for example, which are, I consider as the AutoCAD mode inside of Revit. And if it's okay to create completely 2D detailing in Revit, it's not something that should be frowned upon. But some people think, I've heard sometimes, well, it's impossible to create detailing because everything has to be linked to the 3D model, and sometimes my detailing is a bit different. And I would say, well, in this case, just use drafting views. It's okay. Just draw it in 2D using detailed components. You know, so to me, it's a myth that Revit is bad at detailing. I think the tools are just misunderstood. So I would say that was a big challenge, and everything like linking to CAD. I'm sure many people had this issue where, you know, some user in the office wasn't comfortable enough using Revit. So somebody exported Revit file to CAD, made some changes, and then they asked you to re-import it back to Revit.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah, I would say in the end that didn't happen that often, but in the first couple of years that did happen, and it's always frustrating.
No, it's really bad, that one. I hate that.
Yeah, but you know, it's a user that is in a hurry. He says, you know, Revit's too complicated. I don't understand what's going on. I don't want to cause some issues in the model, so I'll just rather work with CAD.
Comfort zone issue. Comfort zone.
I try to take a responsibility for this. I think it's my job, like to work with users, and if they're doing this, it means I didn't do my job good enough to really teach them and support them, give them all the support I need. Because of course, as a BIM manager, we're a medium-sized firm, about 20-25 people. So I wasn't doing like BIM managing full-time. I also work as an architect, doing design, doing some technical drawings too. So I didn't always have time to give as much support as I wanted, because I had to actually work on the project. But yeah, still, I've tried to give one-on-one support. And I would say a tip for offices trying to transition from CAD to BIM is probably to have a super user with you. Sometimes they can be of any age, but they tend to be more on the younger side usually. And it's the kind of nerd that would watch YouTube videos about Revit on the evenings, because he's just passionate.
We call it BIM champion, right? We call it BIM champion.
The BIM champion. Yeah, the BIM champion. So BIM champion, you know, whenever you have a problem, you go to the BIM champion and he helps. The problem is that firms don't always treat the BIM champions very well, and they tend to get poached by consultants or even software companies. So if you have a BIM champion in your office, try to treat them well. and give them any support they need to do their job.
That's very well said. And I get a few one question here. Is there a basic checklist available on going from CAD to Revit? So I will give the first word to you, and then obviously I will make some comments on that as well.
A checklist.
Checklist or kind of few points maybe you can mention.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, you would probably need to start with a template. Although it depends on the scale of the office, because I've been also working with some sole practitioners doing residential work. So for them, I would say create your template, but don't go too crazy with it, because then you can create a project and information you've created on the first project, you can actually enhance your template with it. So I would say, yeah, try to do a project. Ideally, you would have a little bit more time on your first BIM or your first Revit project, a little more time than you usually do. And then you can really geek out, watch YouTube videos, read blog articles about issues you're facing. Because when you're having a real projects, it's much easier to learn. And because a frequent issue that I see is people have like hours and hours of training, but then they have 6 months where they're still using CAD. And then when their first Revit project comes, they forget everything. And yeah, so getting started straight away on a project can really help. Ideally, if you had a little more time. What about you?
So I will give few advice from there, because I have also quite extensive experience of implementing a lot of companies BIM and using as well. I see BIM as a more business value. So how we can increase value of the business, and which means that you will increase the performance of the individuals. You will deliver the higher quality. You will have a better visualization setup, and you deliver, you communicate more efficiently with the stakeholders internally as well as with the client. So I see it as a more business value. So when you think about Revit, number one thing, forget about Revit. Zoom out and think about BIM. And try to give the mindset of the BIM. Try to understand the mindset of BIM, because if you are solely using Revit, you will just use a one tool, which you eliminate the big power and the major power of, like BIM. And if you have a BIM mindset and then you use Revit, you will be surprised how powerful it gets, rather than you having a just CAD mindset, traditional workflow mindset, and then you say, oh, I want to have, like CAD. So I want to have BIM in place and Revit in place, and I use with the traditional workflow methods Revit, which really doesn't work. Second thing I would say, forget about collaborating CAD and Revit. Stick to Revit. And how do you do that? Yeah. What I suggest generally, as Nicolas said, add a BIM champion into their team, but cluster it. Don't, if you have, for example, in his case, he had 20 people or 25 people a team. Don't put a BIM champion on the 25 people, but cluster the people with an open mindset and the BIM champion together with them, and let them stick only Revit for one project case. They can still use AutoCAD on a few other projects, maybe with other colleagues, but at least one project, only those people are collaborating, and they are collaborating in a Revit environment only, together with the BIM champion. They're trying to solve the issues and so forth. This way, it will spike curiosity, most probably within the other colleagues. And also you can see that these colleagues are learning much, much faster because they're concentrating on a single project. And last thing I would suggest, like also Nicolas mentioned about it, don't take BIM champion, or if you have especially BIM manager, don't take him as don't treat him like a BIM technician. Try to take him to the management team so he brings more value to the business with the decisions, with the approach and so forth. Because if he doesn't understand the business and business goals, he will solely focus on the tools and what tools can make. But if he understands the business and what we are trying to get, how the main pain points we are having from the business point of view, and then he's also understanding from the user point of view, he can really tailor right solutions into the company. I think that is the 3 points that I would say. What do you think on these points, Nicolas?
Yeah, I agree, and I'm happy you mentioned on especially your first point about BIM for more management or business, really understanding BIM. I do agree it's a big issue. because a lot of business owners don't really understand what BIM can do for them. To them, it's just, we're using CAD and then we're using a new software. And there's this process that they don't understand that much. But to really understand what BIM can do for you and what uses of model you want to do, are you going to use the BIM models for renderings, for solar analysis? So what are your goals? What are you actually going to do with these tools? So really think about these questions. Also think having a list of all your employees and their level when it comes to BIM software, and to identify, I've mentioned about one BIM champion, but ideally you would also have what you call them, the sub champions, I guess, that you can identify, and that can also support the main BIM manager, BIM coordinators, I guess you could call them, or just, anyone who's really interested in that. So yeah, understanding BIM from a business point of view, and yeah, from including the BIM managers or anyone on a high BIM level on the management team. It's sad because often you see these really good BIM practitioners, but they don't get quite to associate levels on some firms. I think it's starting to change, because management has to realize that BIM is not just managing layers anymore and setting line weights. It's much more than that. It's really important.
And most of the time, BIM managers, I also see them most of the time, it's not always the scenario, but they are also entrepreneurs. So they are they are pushing for new ideas. They're pushing the boundaries. They have the potential to take the business to the next level. So if you don't give, as a business owner, if you don't give the right position and right chance to those people, you're actually shooting on your own foot. You're not letting them to exploit their skill set into getting the company to the next level. One thing that I would like to really mention, I have another question, but I will come in a second. One thing I really want to mention as well, try to understand the traits and the skill set and the as a personality of the entire team. Because if you are having everyone detail oriented in a one cluster that I was mentioning, and with a BIM manager or BIM champion, you will have an issue because everyone is focusing on detail and the project is not being delivered, So you need to find the right team members with the right motivation. So it's a little hard, but you need to try to dive deeper and understand. So there should be someone who is detail oriented, so can figure out issues and can raise all the time questions. How do we do that? How do we solve these? And so forth. Just that person, for example, dives deeper, but the other person is really pushing the project to be delivered. Because, as I said, if everyone focusing on the details, it will not deliver the project, and this will fail as well. So you need to find the right people as a personality in that cluster. Okay, so I have a question over here. Are the detail views created in a CAD program like AutoCAD brought into Revit, or they are created in Revit? Nicolas earlier on mentioned on this. Revit has a drafting views where you can draw. You can use CAD, basically CAD tools, like he just said a few minutes ago, but it has a limitation on few things. For example, you cannot go less than 0.8 millimeter as a line length. Revit has a limitation of that, and which is very small actually, 1/32 of an inch. You can not go less than that. It will crash. It will not let you to draw it. And another thing that which is as a thing that you must not do, don't explode CAD drawings inside Revit. Don't do it, please. It's nightmare. It makes a mess. Don't because you're not exploding the lines, but everything, all the properties is going now in Revit. All the text layers going into Revit. A lot of things will go into Revit, and most of the time your AutoCAD, it's the truth. It's not well organized. It will be like too many things, unnecessary things that you have in AutoCAD, and everything will come to Revit. So
I would say when it comes to detailing, the best class I had on this topic is by Brian McKee, also known as the Revit Geek, I think. And if you Google his name, Brian McKee, with detailing Revit, he has a course, I think, on Autodesk University. And it's the best I've seen on this topic. His techniques to create detailing is really good, and it's been pretty useful for us.
And don't try to overkill, because some people I have seen try to do like damp proofing on the walls and being so perfect. Try to simplify things. Do you really need it? That's why I'm telling you, take if the BIM manager is a little bit more on a management level and on the user level, they will understand a little bit more. Do you really need that damp proof membrane in 3D, like all these going between the layers? Also, maybe probably not. Yeah. If you really need it on certain areas, I know that ArchiCAD is really good with it, these kind of detailing. I know that I was like participating in a BIM management program, and in 2 weeks time, actually, in 4 weeks time, my mistake, we will have in next month around this time, we will have 2 people from the from Graphisoft, where I participated with their BIM management program as well. It was really good because I was really impressed how level of detail you can go. But again, ArchiCAD has other limitations that Revit is strong at. So I don't want to really obviously judge here which software is better, but I would like to say that overall, from my point of view, if you're just using it for solely modeling purposes, and you're an architect and you're looking for architecture, maybe ArchiCAD might be a better approach for you. Obviously, evaluate the skills tool and if it's right fit. But if you're looking for entire construction workflow, like incorporating multiple stakeholders into it, most probably Revit will be better, because there is a more likelihood that your consultant will also use Revit,
Yeah, probably so. It's probably a little more difficult to find good ArchiCAD resources, right?
That's another thing. You cannot find good training materials there. It will take more time to learn. I mean, I can tell you, if I count right now, I can count literally 10 YouTube channels straightforward to you that for Revit oriented, and ArchiCAD maybe less, So that's another thing, because there's less interest in the overall world market, so therefore less people are interested to make content for it. Maybe can you tell me a little bit about your industry of Canada, how it's overall, from what's your experience, how the BIM is moving forward? I know that there's some kind of organization like CanBIM and other things, like maybe the government. So can you just dive deeper a little more on those aspects for Canada?
Yeah, I would say Canada is a special country because I am in Quebec, and Quebec it's almost like a country within a country, because we speak a different language. And so we have the BIM Quebec group, for example, who is doing amazing works when it comes to BIM. And recently they've launched, with the help of the government, an initiative to help all the architectural firms and engineering, any firms really working in the AEC industries. And for free, they're getting help from the BIM Quebec group to have a BIM diagnostic.
Oh my God!
And basically,
that's a really good example for a government to support.
Yeah, it's amazing. And and they're doing the work you've been mentioning earlier on. They're not really talking about Revit at all. They're talking, okay, but what do you actually want to use BIM for? What are your goals? How is it part of your business? How is it part of your strategy? Who are the best, the users you think could be best at implementing BIM in your business? They're really asking all these questions. And so I think they're currently doing it. I recently left the firm I was working at for a while, but we're in the middle of this process. So I think it's been extremely helpful, but that is in Quebec. So I think, I would say in the last couple of years, it seems like there was a big boost. I don't know if the COVID situation helped, where the government announced, a lot of funds to keep the economy going, and a lot of them went to teaching and the digital transformation here in Quebec. So I've been pretty hopeful about how things are going here.
That's really interesting. And what about overall Canada? Do you have any ideas on how the situation is overall Canada, or you're more concentrated in the Quebec?
Yeah, I would say I'm probably a little more concentrated in Quebec. Yeah, to be perfectly honest. It's like we're on a little scene here.
I know that also there is like companies like BIM One, who the founder of BIM Track, and they do have like a solid focus on BIM and management and so forth. So this is really interesting. I mean, like country within country, and so many BIM enthusiasts. Everyone is like coming into one location. This is really cool, actually. What is the population?
The BIM track and BIM one team are just next door. They're here in Quebec City.
Yeah.
Mhm. The population in Quebec, we're a little more than 8 million, I think.
Do you have enough projects or so forth to support all these people? Or, for example, these people are focusing overall entire Canada?
Which people? Sorry.
Like, for example, BIM One or other companies. Do you think that they are just focusing on Quebec City, or they're like?
No, I think BIM One are actually they're getting in Vancouver, which is in Western Canada. Yeah, they're pretty much everywhere in Canada now. And BIM Track is international now. It's getting bigger every day, it seems. So yeah, it's pretty fun to have these guys from Quebec doing this work.
Absolutely. And do you use can you just mention, for example, what kind of, since we mentioned BIM Track, what are the other software products that you like, or maybe like we can also mention if you use BIM Track and maybe other software products that you use together with Revit to improve your efficiency. Can you give a little advice over on this aspect?
Yeah, sure. Well, I would say the first things that comes to mind is I always like to mention the free stuff. Revit by Hassan, which is he has been doing in his free time, and it's all free. And to me, it's the best Revit plugin out there. And it blows my mind. You have all these paid plugins. Some of them are great, not dissing them or anyway, but Revit is so amazing. And you can see it was made by a Revit user that was facing real problems and real frustrations. And it just made all the most helpful tool in a single plugin. It also allows you to create your own little plugin using the Python language. So I would say that's the first thing that comes to mind. I would say Enscape, you're an architect as well. And even though I'm more on the BIM managing side, my heart is very close to designing and creating beautiful buildings. So Enscape they've been consistently doing great work and improving
also the communication
software.
Also the communication. Yeah. Enscape is really good for BIM communication as well. You can also see BIM data. You can make now issues directly inside it. So it's not only visualization but also communication. So it helps BIM, I think. Even though you're just BIM manager, not an architect, I think you would be still love like Enscape. And what else?
Other than that, I also like Lumion on the rendering side. Although the connection with Revit, it works. It's not as fluid as with Enscape, but Lumion has some nice features when it comes to animations, for example.
It's more for representation. I agree. Lumion is really. I also tried Twinmotion as well, but I found the smoothest out of all like Enscape because it's so fast. It's another window. I don't need to install software. It's out there. You can publish in the web version as well. So you can send just a link to the people. So it is.
Yeah, that's what I like the most about Enscape. Is how easy it is to use and how smooth the link is with Enscape, with Revit. Sorry. And absolutely. What else do I have? I should have a look at my my Revit to see what other plugins I have.
All right. So
I would say shout out to the Diroots plugins. I had Jose, the founder, on my show. Again, I just love free plugins.
No, their plugins are really great.
It's easier to tell users, get this plugin. It's for free. I mean, at the same time, I know that. I mean, it's okay for people to charge money for their work, right? But I would say it's easier on a firm, for example, to get everybody to download the free plugin. Else, you have to ask for permission. You have to ask your boss to give a budget to buy a plugin, for example.
Absolutely.
And like for Revit, they have the pattern maker tool, which is really amazing. And there was paid plugin you could use, but for example, I think there was Hatch 22, but often there was a single license in the office. So anytime you needed to make a pattern, you had to go see that user that had a license installed. And what I like with Revit, well, just install it and use it. You don't have to ask around the guy who has the license, right?
Absolutely. So really kudos to those people who are pushing towards like making Revit users their job easier. So I have one question over here. What process is taken to become a BIM manager? Like Revit certification, coursework, experience. Would you like to answer that?
I never had any except a Revit course when I started at the first firm that was using Revit. I've never had really any other BIM related courses. To me, it was all watching, spending my evening watching YouTube. So I would say develop the curiosity mindset and be the kind of users that is watching BIM videos in the evening, and buying, I don't know, books these days. There's a couple of books.
No, I
that
do
I do
have
about them.
I do have one book actually. It's a really good. There is one Harden and McCool, BIM and Construction Management, that's really good. This is really good as well, delivering value with BIM. There is there are a few other books that I can mention, even like in the chat if you want. In the meantime. But there are really, I think I agree with you. So the thing is that the curiosity is one thing, but one thing, understand the meaning of BIM. First, before saying BIM Manager, what do you mean by BIM Manager? BIM Manager can be like, if you just treat it as a Revit Manager, it's one thing. If you treat it as a business developer, like business development manager, because that can be combined with the BIM, bringing technology. I will just give you an example, just an example. We are collaborating closely with one subcontractor. They are providing a niche, they're a niche subcontractor in the industry. And we are partnering more and more because traditionally they have been doing it in CAD, and they've been like very basic issues have caused them thousands, maybe, or like 20s of thousands of dollars, cost issues, just a few basic small mistakes. And now with the use of a right way, with a parametric modeling approach, and getting they are having the bill of materials in advance. They are getting different types of structures or prefabricated components right away before, like even in the lead section, we have a free lead section where the client just approaches and they get just the free like Enscape, render right away in their hand, because we can parametrically quickly model it, put things together, say, are you looking for this? And they say yes, and then the contract is bound, so there are no conflicts. So business has grown, I would say, 3 times of the market value since we were involved. That is the real benefit. So for example, BIM for me is bringing value to the businesses, not about Revit, not about Enscape, not about anything else. Yeah, it's about like one thing that I would like to mention here. I know that I'm talking a little more than Nicolas. Actually, he has to talk more, but I think it's a really important thing people has to understand. BIM generally has 3 phases, and you need to understand all these 3 phases. You can call it modeling management, or you can call it process, tools, and policies. You can call it in different approaches, but the idea over here is that you have the product in mind. This is one way, and the process, how you deliver this product, what kind of approach you're using, that's another thing. And the management side, how are you managing everything in order to deliver that? So it has 3 phases. So you need to really dive deeper and understand those 3 phases. Tell me a little bit about what do you think of the future of BIM and future of Revit. Maybe you can just mention a little on that. And I will in a second discuss Revit career and some advice from and do's and don'ts by Nicolas.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll start with jumping on what you've just said. I think when I started with Revit, with BIM in about 2011, the main argument from switching from CAD to Revit was to save time. I don't know if you remember it this way too, but it was the main argument,
Yes.
Save time. I would say these days, it doesn't seem like the main argument anymore. Although you can save time, but it's not the main argument. It's just you provide more value, and it's more helpful to have a BIM model. And I think slowly the industry is pushing this way. It's more value. And when it comes to the future of BIM, I would say it feels to me that generative design is finally coming. It seems like it's finally getting somewhere. We've been hearing about it for so many years now. And what I'm seeing for TestFit, for example, so quick shout out, I'm having TestFit CEO Clifton Harness on my show next week. And I really can't wait to speak to him. But like finally, like it's usable by people, because everything I've saw about the generative design, you really needed to be a computational expert to use the tools, or it was reserved to maybe some big firms for some specific task. But it seems slowly we're getting there. Automation, we're just getting started, really. And something interesting is even the term generative design maybe it's not the best one because it feels like a black box. You don't really know what's inside of it, generative design. And like Clifton from TestFit, he says he prefers the word configurator. And I find it an interesting word because it really means that the user is still in power over everything he does. He just configurates all the parameters he wants in his building. The user still has the power. The architect still has the power. It's just using the tool to help him create as an assistant, really. So yeah, all these avenues will get interesting. I really can't wait to see will happen in the AC and BIM industry in the next 10 years. I think it's going to be wild. It's hard to predict everything that will happen.
I mean, I definitely agree with you, and I'm really excited that every day there are new tools are coming and coming again. So I have one question before. In a second, I will explain also the future from my point of view, and then we will also discuss a little bit about the Revit Pure, its present and future, and BIM advice from Nicolas. But before that, let me answer the question, or ask actually this question. What do you think about BIM in small, medium engineering consulting company? So maybe you can answer this question quickly.
In engineering company?
Engineering consulting company, yeah, engineering company.
I would say in engineering, got a lot of questions about MEP and structures. Sadly, I don't have that much knowledge about it. Like it's hard to find experts on MEP, right? I'm sure there's a lot of them, but there's most experts seem to be on the architecture side, myself included. So, but I get a lot of emails asking for advice on MEP, and sadly, I don't have much to tell them. But I'm trying to find a MEP expert to come on my show.
The MEP part of this, from my experience, as soon as the MEP engineers or MEP company sees the power of Revit, like with the MEP tools, they just solely fall in love. That's my experience. Oh, how quick it is to get all these calculations, all these outputs, all this stuff that takes a lot of time. From my experience, it's more difficult to get a structural engineers on board with Revit. Because I mean, most of the time, I believe architects doesn't have that analytical models in mind and going through them, or it is very difficult for engineers to come up with these connections and all those complex details and modifications. So most of the time, they were finding these issues. So again, like Nicolas said, I was like more concentrating on MEP guys, less MEP, like, because this is not really my area, but I was like more contractors and the client and the architect. So there's three aspects I was focusing as well. But from the engineering side, I think it definitely brings a more and more value. Again, you need to understand those three things. You need to understand the process, and you need to understand how you will deliver the product. And is it maybe Revit is not the best thing for you? Maybe Tekla will work much better for you. And he's asking also, my manager understands BIM, benefits of BIM. Everyone understands the benefits of BIM. I want to make a point on this. Everyone understands. But when you say, like, I was like seeing one image where they were saying, who wants to change, who wants BIM? And everyone raises their hand. And who wants to make BIM, or who wants to make change? And no one puts their hand. Yeah. No one wants to make a movement. So what you need to understand, to convince, especially the business directors, you need to show them the value. Value means most of the time it's very difficult. Don't focus on the profit. That's a mistake. If you focus on profit and showing them, hey, these numbers, you're going to save that much amount of money, that is wrong. But instead, focus on how, with the help of using BIM, their business will go to the next level. That is, you need to explain to them, and that's very difficult, So if you really go in deeper and explain them the value of their business, and with plain language explanations, they will definitely understand, and they will be motivated. All right, so let's discuss a little about like Revit Pure. So can you tell us about the present and the future of Revit Pure? What are you doing so far, and where is it going?
Yeah, well, I started Revit Pure in 2016. It has been a side project for me, a pretty big side project, I would say. And in the recent months, I had so much ideas about it that I decided to go full time with Revit Pure. Also doing some consultancy on the side. And as you might have seen, I've started the Revit Pure live show. where I interview, or at least have it on a webinar form, different experts, BIM experts on their fields, and we geek out about software or about specific tools inside of Revit. So I've been doing that for a while, and it's been really fun. The part that I like the most about it is meeting all the experts and getting to know them. Like this show is almost an excuse to get to to talk with all these people and to get their knowledge. And else, I'm working on a new course that is called Manage. I've been working on this course for the last 2 years. It's slowly getting there. It will be called Manage. It will be an advanced learning package. I'm hoping to release it before the end of the year.
What it's going to be called?
It will be called Manage simply. So it's an advanced course. Because right now I have 2 paid premium learning packages: Basics for beginners, and Design, that is using Revit for design purpose and presentation. And so the next one is really, I don't know if you're familiar with the Revit Or pamphlets. You are? Well, it's pamphlets are little PDF guides that I send for free. You can find them on the Revit Or website if you want.
We will put them in the link, by the way. So it will be after the video. It will be in the description.
Sure. So I want to expand on the topic of the templates and the most popular topics, and expand and dig even deeper to help BIM managers using, the simple approach I've been using with Revit Or for a while. And yeah, I have many other projects. I'll stick to it for the moment. I don't want to overpromise to everybody, but a lot going on.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, it's really important that seeing people like different channels and different authors delivering different value, because this helps the industry. For example, the aim of Integrated BIM channel wasn't solely in Revit, even though we do have a lot of Revit tutorials as well. It was more about pushing the BIM, explaining to people and repeating the real meaning of it, having a wider picture. And like Revit Viewer website is focusing on Revit more in details and getting really exploiting really to its maximum extension. So these kind of individual channels, I definitely suggest you to subscribe for both channels, because this will bring you more and more value, and it will allow you to look from different perspectives of those products. Even if you're not using it, you will understand, okay, these products can do these things, or I know that BIM is what BIM is, but if you hear BIM from different experts, you will hear 10 different opinions, and you will say, okay, I thought I knew BIM, but now I don't know BIM actually. Now I'm learning BIM. So okay, so what can you just tell, like in a few minutes, what were the major lessons in your career?
I would say a tip that I would have for people is to be generous with your knowledge. If you learn something really amazing, well, share it. Or write a post on social media, post a couple of images. And if you're generous with your knowledge, I think good things would come to you. You will get noticed. It will help your career. The main reason is to be generous because it's a good thing, but I think it will definitely help your career. So yeah, create your own channel, create your own blog, start to write, and just try to share the amazing things you've learned with BIM or with Revit or any software. And if you cannot find a tutorial online, well, post it by yourself. So it's the challenge I would give to users at home, to try to teach. And the things about teaching is a lot of topics that I teach. It's initially, before started teaching it, I was frustrated. I didn't understand it. So when I want to understand a topic, I try to teach it. And when creating the teaching material, I actually learn about it. And so one of my most famous posts, for example, the one that still get the most views on my website, is about the coordinate system in Revit. And I wrote this post not because I did understand it, because I didn't understand it. And I was frustrated with that. So I basically went and watched every videos about coordinates, read every single blog post. And I found there was lacking a guide that explained everything about it. So that was I was trying to create. I was trying to create the guide I wish I had when I started researching the topic.
I definitely agree with you. So because of teaching 5 5,000 hours, over 5,000 hours with different professionals. They were asking me questions that I have never taught, like every individual expert. Like there were some people who has 40 years experience in their career in the particular niche field, like for example, project management or structural engineer, or it could be architect. They're asking such a great questions that you would never think in an early age or without that experience. And those questions actually helped me, like by teaching, I started challenging myself more, and I could allow, like growth and taking different point of view and understanding things much better by teaching simply, so. That's really important. So we are concluding today. So before the conclusion, but we would like to hear your BIM advice, so do's and don'ts in industry. And in the meantime, please list your final questions, and I will try my best to answer them as soon as possible after he answers do's and don'ts.
So the do's and don'ts. So you mean like advice, things that users should
what
avoid?
To do in like what to generally do and what to don't do. Like main things. Maybe a few things like what to do.
Okay, well, I'll mention a few things that I've already mentioned, but don't go back to AutoCAD for anything really. I mean, dealing with CAD with the inside of Revit is so problematic. It never works like you want, and you might think you were going to save time, but you won't. And I would say it applies with everything inside of Revit. Sometimes you want to do something quickly, and so you might not do the best workflow because you think, oh, I'm going to save time. I'm just going to use model in place, for example, instead of creating a family because it's faster. But in the end, it's always problematic. It will always come back to bite you. So take the time to do things correctly and with the best practices. And I will say also to document what you're doing. I like whenever I implemented something new or a new workflow, I found something, I kept a little register of it and send it to other users. So the knowledge is spread all around the office. So that would be my...
Let me put a point over there. It is really important. I mean, like, for example, especially focusing on niche stuff, like, again, I've already mentioned it, fabrication. There are so many complex stuff and so many different ideas. I mean, the ideas we came up in Revit, most probably the Revit, like the people who founded Revit and who is like coding it, most probably didn't thought about those ideas because we are finding like those niche things and finding those special things. And then when you find those things, do it parameter sized. I always make sure that I make a note of that or record a video, like maybe Loom or something. I just make sure that I archive it in the library, because after 6 months hitting, I'm like, how did I come with this idea? What was the logic behind it? All these complex parameters and so forth. So it was really easy for me to say, okay, I did this parameters because of that reason, and this is because I gave me this issue and so forth, because it's impossible to remember this, especially if you're focusing on the family side. Definitely do, like record a video, but otherwise, I definitely agree with Nicolas that you need to record your learning process, even though you don't want to share with anyone, for you, because you will forget a lot of all these, like most of those parts, since you do it once maybe or twice, you're not doing it every day. Obviously, Nicolas is like doing templates over and over again, so he doesn't need to record those bits because he has an idea now how to do things. But if you're doing once or twice, definitely record it immediately. So unless you repeat a lot. And what are the do's?
The do's, yeah. What I would say, yeah, keep track of everything you do. Use the family editor. Don't use model in place, for example. Let me think about the other do's. I would say to me, it's really about sharing knowledge. I think if it's the main message I want people to take away from this, even if you don't want to share with the whole world, at least share it inside your office. Have a monthly meeting with at least or have a Revit group inside your business where you share all the cool things you learn with people on your team. That's this way that the knowledge is advanced. And maybe if you share something, your colleague would say, actually, I know a better way to do it. So to me, it's about sharing knowledge and being curious. Curiosity always helps, and when it comes to BIM. I would say that most of the people who struggle the most with BIM and with Revit are the ones that are not very curious about it. they just find it a pain and too complicated. But they're stuck in the mindset. They're stuck with the idea it's bad and it's complicated. So they never can get past that.
Sounds great. So thank you very much for Nicolas coming on board. We don't have any other questions. We will have in 2 weeks time, bi-weekly, we will have another BIM talks. We will talk about asset and facilities management in BIM. When did you have you had a live talk? When did you have your live session?
Revit Pure Live is the show where I get people on BIM experts.
Yeah, but when did you have the next one? So they know about it.
The next one is on Wednesday. It's every Wednesday.
It's every Wednesday. So obviously we pass this Wednesday. So next Wednesday, we do have also Revit Pure, a new session on that. So definitely check it out. It's more about the different experts. You are diving, Nicolas is diving deeper into understanding how Revit can be exploited from different points of views. So definitely check it out and subscribe to both channels. We are excited to share more and more interesting topics with you and looking forward to your contribution in the next talks. Have a lovely day and take care and be safe.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you very much.